Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another card making video tutorial. Today we're going to create some beautiful apple layering stenciled cards on craft cardstock, my favorite, using brand new products from the Simon Says stamp Just a Note release. I'm going to be sharing ideas on stretching your background that you create, as well as mixing and matching for different occasions and using different sentiments, all of that good stuff. I've got some 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch craft cardstock. This is Nina Desert Storm cardstock here, and then I have the 4-piece apple layering stencil set from Simon Says stamp, and we're going to be using the Altenews stamp wheel today to hold our stencil in place while we are working. I'm going to be using guava and cherry inks, and we're going to do an all-over design. I think it would also be cute to do different colors of apples, like green and yellow, and do kind of stripes of apples, if you will, for a different looking background. The guava ink definitely looks different on the craft background, but I love it. It really looks a little less pinky, I think, at least when it initially goes on. Now remember, as the ink goes on the cardstock and it's wet, it will smooth out, lighten as it is absorbed into the cardstock, and it kind of just gives a beautiful, nice, even appearance once that ink has dried. Now sometimes my stencil sticks because that awesome stamp wheel mat is super sticky, so I just use something to kind of pry it up. We're going to grab stencil number 2, and this time we are going to stencil with the cherry ink. This is going to be our dark color of ink, and it is along the right side of each apple. And again, it's going to go on really, really dark, but it evens out, smooths out as that ink dries. Next, we're going to do the apple stems and finally the leaves. For the apple stems, we're going to use some MOCHA ink. You could do as many of these backgrounds as you need. It would be especially useful if you were going to be creating more than 1 or 2 cards. I'm actually going to do this portrait style card, then I'm going to take my stencils and do a landscape style card as well. I didn't do the stenciling for the second background panel since I've already shown this once. I just changed the orientation of my background piece. Now I'm using the the small size blending brushes from Simon Says stamp. I like these as you can kind of just get all of those little small areas perfectly. When I pull this stencil away, it really starts looking like an apple. Finally, we're going to finish with the adorable little leaf. This time, we're going to use some PEARFECTION ink. I had the new cube right here on my desk, so I went ahead and used that. You want to make sure you hit each area that is on the background panel. Now I'm going to get 3 cards from 2 panels. If I had cut down the second panel, I probably could have gotten 4. But I'm going to show you how I saved the little scrap from the first card I created and really stretched my background. Using a sticky mat in my MISTI, I'm going to place that stencil background right there, and then I'm going to take the thank you text background stamp from Simon Says stamp and an awesome white pigment ink, also from Simon Says stamp, and we're going to do my favorite technique. You guys guessed it, text over a background. I love the way this looks layered. It will lighten as that ink dries as well, but it looks amazing and it just adds to the background look and feel. I will also stamp this text background on the landscape style as well. Here is what that one looks like, same thing. And we're just going to go ahead and stamp this. This is the background that's going to get trimmed down a little bit. My white pigment ink pad is super juicy. It's brand new. I always like a brand new ink pad. So it's giving perfect results. Once we have our background, it's time to add the different elements to create our different cards. Up first, I absolutely love the Right Stuff stamp set. And if anyone else is around my age, I don't know why, but all I can sing is New Kids on the Block. Even though the word right is spelled different here. And I wasn't even a super fan, but that just keeps going in my head, which is kind of funny. I have stamped the pencil with a black ink. I'm using Intense Black ink from Hero Arts. I did stamp one of the greetings right there on my pencil, and I'm using ELOW markers to color in my pencil right on the craft cardstock. With having a craft background, I really didn't want to incorporate a white outline on my image. I find that coloring on craft gives you beautiful, perfect results. So I'm going to color in my pencil and then use the coordinating die to die cut it. And this is going to be used on one of the landscape style cards. Both of these cards are geared for teachers, which is perfect as we are headed back to school here soon. I can hardly believe it. So next I'm going to take the teacher die, also brand new from this release, and I'm going to die cut it 3 times from white cards, or pardon me, red cardstock. This is the Schoolhouse red cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, just to give it a little bit more of a little more dimension, make it stand out a little bit more. I'm playing around with my background panel to see how much I want to trim off. I end up trimming about 1 1/4 inches. That's going to be left over 1 1/4 or 1 1/2. I think it's just 1 1/4. And that's going to be trimmed off of this panel. I don't want to waste that, so I am going to save that and use it on my second card. I'm going to put a little adhesive along one long side, and I'm layering a little piece of palm colored Hero Arts cardstock underneath that edge, just to give a nice definition from the craft of the background to that craft stencil design. Super simple. So now I am going to measure down, trim off that 1 1/4 inches, which is what it was. I could see it there on my trimmer. And I'm going to adhere this background right to my craft, another piece of craft cardstock. We're going to put foam adhesive underneath the pencil and pop that up right there below the green cardstock border. I find that these Simon Says Stamp foam adhesive squares fit perfectly. I'm going to put a tiny one kind of on the tip of my pencil, and then we're going to just pop this in place. Then we're going to take our teacher die, and we are going to stack the 3 die cuts one on top of another. I'm using the backing paper from my foam adhesive as a great spot to do this, as it's not getting glue on my work surface and everything pulls off of it really easily. Sometimes when I've put foam adhesive on the back of something and then I realize I'm not quite ready to place it onto my project, I just stick them back on these backing sheets, and then I can peel it off kind of like a sticker and pop it on my card. I love the delicate look of this die, and I also love the font. I chose not to use the outline here, but there is an outline or shadow that comes with this die. Once this is glued in place, I'm going to embellish. That's basically it for this card. Super easy. I thought about doing multiple hearts. You guys know I love my little hearts, but I decided to stick with the one black coffee heart right there at the end of the word teacher. The final thing is to take this panel and place it on a white side fold card base. Now, don't pay attention to me adding those hearts. I decided that looked a little funny and I didn't like it at all, so I quickly peeled them off and just wiped up my glue. So cute and fun, and the perfect way to create your own background pattern paper basically for your card. Now, like I said, I didn't want to throw away that 1.5 inch by 5.5 inch strip that I cut off this panel. So I thought, why not go ahead and make another background? There is a great border stamp in the Right Stuff, and I stamped that right on another piece of craft cardstock using the Intense Black ink. Now, there is a coordinating die, but I decided to just stamp it right on my cardstock. I laid out my border where I thought it would go. I did place that green cardstock along the one long side to give me a nice divider between the pencils and my border. Then I'm simply going to color in my pencils. I did all of the erasers first, then I'm going to do the lead, pardon me, not the lead, the wood. Then I think I did the lead next, and then maybe the pencils themselves. I decided this time that I wanted to mix up the pencils a little bit. Instead of doing yellow traditional number 2 pencils, I decided to do, yes, some yellow pencils, but also do some red to tie in to the red of the apples. And I really love how it turns out. It's very similar, but yet gives you a different kind of look, but you're not wasting any of the stenciled design. And that is what I like most about this project, is we're not wasting any of that beautiful inking and stamping that we did for the background. I'm going to continue to color these in. I am going to speed up the video just a little bit while I do the coloring. First, I'm going to go through and I'm going to color all of one color and do the shading, I think, and then I'm going to go through and do the other color. I decided to go ahead and do red first, and I erred on the side of caution and started a little lighter than what I ended up finishing with. In fact, at the very end, I go back with a darker red and just add a little additional shading there. I'm not going every other, but I did kind of more of a random pattern. So some of the same color of pencils are next to each other. I did super quick coloring here. Doesn't have to be anything fancy for fantastic results. Even the yellow looks amazing on craft cardstock. Once you add all that shading, it looks phenomenal. And here's where I decided to add a little bit darker red, super quick like. And then we'll place our border along the bottom edge. This time I'm going to do a couple of different sentiments. Because I didn't stamp on a pencil for my smaller sentiment like I did for the first card, I'm going to take the phrase, "You are so sharp," and we're going to place that in the upper right side of the background above the pencils. The word teacher is going to be used again, this time stacking 3 gray teacher die cuts one on top of another and placing that over along the right side, sitting right on top of the border along the bottom. We'll finish with a small heart accent at the end of the word teacher, just like we did before. I decided to splatter this background with a little white gouache. There's a lot of open craft area and I felt like it needed just a little something before I add my die cuts. So I have my splatter box, I have a small paintbrush, I added a bit of water to my gouache. I probably could have added a little more, had a little trouble getting it to move. And we're going to allow this to dry before we add our die cuts to this and finish it all up. It dries pretty quickly and it adds a fun touch. You could do this to any of the backgrounds for an additional layer, especially over that stenciled and stamped background. For my final card today, the first background I stenciled, which was in the portrait style, I ended up trimming down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I thought it would be fun to give this one a little bit of a white border to tie in to the white text stamped background. And this card is basically going to be where the background, the pattern paper we created, is the focus point, and we're going to add a sentiment on top. Much like we did with the craft cardstock for coloring in the pencil, we're going to do that for the greeting on this card as well, but we're just going to stamp it on craft cardstock instead. From another brand new product from the Just a Note Simon Says stamp release, we're going to use the Swell stamp set. This is a fantastic stamp set that has nice big sentiments, 3 of those, and then 3 smaller sentiments that work with them. I'm going to center my panel on my white top fold card base, and then we're going to stamp I Think You're Swell on another piece of Desert Storm cardstock using guava and cherry inks. We're going to do an ombre effect right on the craft cardstock. Now, as pretty as this is, it does tend to smooth out, maybe fade a little bit, which is great for background, but for my sentiment, I really want it to stand out. In order to make it stand out, once I'm finished getting the ombre effect that I like with my ink pads, I'm going to leave my stamp right in my MISTI, make sure it's really good and clean, and then we're going to stamp right over the top of what we've just stamped with clear embossing ink. As dark as it is right now, because the ink is wet, it does fade a little bit, so adding that layer of clear ink and then clear embossing powder gives our sentiment a beautiful shiny finish that stands out. I love the little bit of texture that it's going to add to our card, as well as just making that sentiment shine. This can be done with any color of ink that you use to stamp a greeting. Even if you're stamping it on white cardstock and you want to have a shiny sentiment, you could always stamp it with the color of ink that you want, then stamp it again with clear ink and emboss with clear embossing powder. It's a really fun technique that I haven't used in a while, and it reminded me that I need to use it more often because I absolutely love the results. Once we have our greeting heat embossed with our clear embossing powder, and my poor clear embossing powder is full, I think I need to be using it more. I am going to die cut this sentiment with the coordinating die. Watch that beautiful color take shine. When you put the clear embossing powder on and it's not heat set yet, you think, oh my goodness, what did I do? But then when you melt it, beautiful. On a scrap piece of white cardstock, I'm going to stamp another greeting from the stamp set, I'm so lucky to know you, and then it will read, I think you're swell, I think that's cute. I stamped that with Perfection ink, and then I'm going to die cut with a sentiment label die. If you wanted to, you could stamp this on craft cardstock as well. I felt like because we have a nice white border and the white text, that this would stand out a little bit better against the background. I'm going to take my favorite teeny tiny sentiment label die cut my greeting, and then we can put it all together. I'm going to put foam adhesive on the back of my sentiment and pop it up. Foam adhesive for the win yet again. Popping it up off the background also makes it a little more legible, especially with a text background. We're also going to put foam adhesive back behind our sentiment strip and then adhere that right above. We'll finish our design today with a scattering of Pretty Pink Posh, Ruby Red, and Pistachio Pearls. I wanted to keep the embellishment really minimal here. We have a big bold greeting and a beautiful stenciled and stamped background, and I felt like it didn't need a whole lot to really shine. And this is a completely different card than the other 2 cards as far as recipient goes. This would work great for a teacher as well if you wanted to, but it also would work for anyone. And I really love that about the design. I feel like it translates, the design translates well, whether you need a teacher card or you need an anybody card. So apples are good for any time. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue here and there. I'm, of course, using the triangle trays from Simon Says Stamp to hold on to my embellishments while I scatter those around the design. I absolutely love these triangle trays for seeing the embellishments that I have and being able to pick up exactly what I want, but then funneling them back into the storage containers. I use these great little trays here and containers to keep all of my pearls and sequins and beads and confetti and things in. And so it really works great. It's just much easier to pick out exactly what you want right out of these little trays. Super pretty. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this set of 3 stencil layering apple cards on craft cardstock featuring Simon Says Stamp Just a Note release products. The supplies I used to create my cards today are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Bye! Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There's exclusive content, you'll receive a handmade birthday card from me during your birthday month, monthly lives for my top tier patrons, and more. We would love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you're always notified when I have a video or go live. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again next time.